Today I want to take a look at the M1 Mac Mini as a home server. Apple's M1 processors have been praised for their performance and power consumption in their given power classes, and have generally led to very good laptop and tablet products. And I want to see how well this translates into a home server, along with how well macOS works as a home server operating system. Taking a look at the Mac Mini, it's a 1-liter class PC, similar in size to something like a Dell Optiplex Micro. But compared to the other systems in this space, Apple's design looks much more clean. But unfortunately that means there's no front panel I/O and everything is on the back, including the power button. But fortunately Apple includes a built-in AC power brick, so you don't have an external power brick sticking somewhere. The other parts of the I/O include dual Thunderbolt 4 ports, dual USB Type-A ports, and a 1 gigabit Ethernet jack, which can be upgraded to 10 gigabit at the factory if you choose. There's also an HDMI out and an analog audio output. Other than that on the hardware, there's nothing else really to see, look at, or change. The bottom little foot is attached on, so you can't easily change it, and Apple says there's no built-in hardware swappable parts inside. And even if you do take it apart, things like memory and storage are soldered on, so what you buy is what you get with this hardware. The system I'm using today is a 16 GB of RAM, 500 GB of storage model. But now you can get newer M2 Pro models with up to 32 GB of RAM and 2 TB storage if you wish. Though Apple does charge you a good amount more than market prices for upgrading storage and RAM in these systems. My biggest complaint hardware-wise with the M1 Mac Mini is how poorly space is used inside this system. This M1 Mac Mini is filled with about half air, and there's almost nothing in half the system. And to show how much can be fit into a system of this size is the 2010 Mac Mini, which unlike the M1 Mac Mini has a CD-DVD drive, a spot for a 2.5-inch hard drive, a higher power processor, and the bottom comes off for easy ability to swap RAM in the system. And I wish that Apple would have used this form factor potentially to give you more capabilities, like maybe having dual internal 2.5-inch hard drives, or would have used the extra space to make a larger fanless heatsink so dust buildup wouldn't be a problem, or they would have just made the M1 Mac Mini smaller. For this video, I'm going to be using macOS 13 for all of my testing. I wish Apple would have kept macOS Server, or the server app that they used to have, but some of those features have found their way into the base version of macOS, and a lot of the other things that were included in the server app are just open source utilities, which you can download and use on your own, which I will be doing in this video. I'm glad there's been significant progress to bring Linux to the M1 and M2 Macs, but I'm not going to be using that in this video because I want to take a look at how macOS is as a home server operating system, and I also want to be able to use some of the features that only Apple's macOS has on this platform right now, like having hardware video encoding. Now I'm going to take a look at how well macOS on the Mac Mini M1 works as a home server operating system. I want to take a look at the built-in sharing utilities and some of the third-party common home server applications that people like to run and see how well they run on the M1 Mac Mini. So let's first take a look at Apple's built-in sharing utilities. So under System Preferences and then General and then Sharing, we can see a lot of Apple's built-in sharing utilities. A lot of these are just open source programs that Apple's repackaged. For example, file sharing is Samba. So if I click this little I menu, I can see which I want to share to, permissions, maybe this little folder I just set up that gives me permissions to access it. It says I can use Samba to mount it, and I can set some options. Now, an interesting thing to note is you actually have to set up the password separately for this, just like how you do in Linux, because the Samba password is separate from your macOS password. But when I say done here, I should be able to take a look at my Windows system right here, look at the path that it gave me earlier, and go into Map and Network Drive on this system here. And with that IP address put in, I can see it prompts me for my password for this system. Upon typing that in, I can see Brandon's, I'm just going to look at Brandon, which is my home account, tap Finish. And then I can see all my other files on here. So for example, I can see this Jellyfin share that I have full of media that I might want to test later. So if I go play one of these files, it should just open VLC with a file right here that can play my video on it. Looks like that's working. And just as a quick speed test, I'm going to copy these files here and then paste them onto a local drive on the system to see how fast I can copy and paste it. And it looks like it pretty much fills up gigabit. This is about exactly what you could expect for an SMB file server. Taking a look back at the other features that Apple has here, they have things like screen sharing, remote login, and remote management for managing the system remotely. This seems to be using VNC and SSH under the hood, as well as Apple's own remote management system. If you have another Mac, it should be pretty easy across the network to take a look at your other computers you have and then click on remote access if it shows up there. You get a few other ones that really aren't made for desktops, things like internet sharing and Bluetooth sharing. You have things like media sharing if you use iTunes and other Apple utilities and their media. And you have another content caching, which can be kind of nice if you have a lot of other Apple devices, because it'll cache files you have on like iCloud and Apple Updates and let you save network bandwidth by downloading them locally. And these utilities that are built in are fine, and some of them have some unique uses, but I'd like to go above and beyond what those utilities give me and do some of my own things. And before I do any of that, I want to install a few other programs that lets me get a little bit more out of macOS and let me get some more Linux-y-like features out of it. First one is Homebrew, which is a package manager for macOS that lets you get a lot of your simple like Linux-like utilities and little programs super easily. So they have an easy installer where you can copy and paste it into the terminal and it'll install Homebrew on your system. And this way you can do brew install maybe htop or tmux, so a lot of these simple little utilities you might like to use on your system. It'll take a minute to install as it uses some of the Xcode framework to do it, so it'll install in a second. The other program I've installed is Docker. They have a Docker desktop made for macOS, and this should let you run Docker containers. And hopefully this will let me run a lot of the self-hosted programs that come in a Docker format so I can just plug and play them on this system. And thanks to some of the online guides with a lot of self-hosted programs, I have a few programs here that I want to download, run, and see how well they work on this M1 Mac Mini. So the first thing is Plex. Plex is a super common media server, so I want to just go download that Plex media server. And let's see how it works. It looks like they have one made for macOS High Sierra and later. Click allow to download. They don't seem to have anything specific-y about macOS for Intel or Apple Silicon, but it looks like I can just click on Plex media server, open, move to the applications folder, and it's about that easy to get a Plex server set up and running. I have to do a little bit of configuration before I can actually use it, but there it is running. Another media server is Jellyfin. If I want to go run Jellyfin and go macOS, do the macOS version, go to downloads, and I can go download the macOS installer. Actually, I already downloaded it on the system, so if I hit open it, it runs in the top folder like this, launch web UI, and I get a similar format right here to take a look at that system with. Looks like it took a second to start running, but right again, it's ready to be set up and used on the system. Now let's take a look at NexCloud. NexCloud is a self-hosted file service, which is kind of a cloud-like solution. So they have apps for something like your phone if you want to easily be able to sync files and take a look at it on your phone. They have a nice web app, and they have desktop apps for Linux, macOS, and Windows. Let's try running it on here though. They seem to have actually a all-in-one Docker image, which probably will work with Docker on the system, so let's try running it. Opens a little GitHub page, which gives me a copy and paste link to go. And let's see how it goes when I start running this in the terminal on my system. And hopefully, NexCloud on the system is as easy to run as copying this little Docker run command on their web browser into my terminal and then pressing enter. And typing in my password so it can access the Docker service, and it gets a complaint about the Docker socket. Now, I am far from a Docker expert, so I don't really know what's running here. So I'm going to try running another container. So I'm going to copy and paste the Aersonic command to run, and plug and paste it so it starts running. And I get another error on this one where it says it wants AMD 64, but it got ARM 64 and can't run. I'm assuming it's possible to install NexCloud on the system using PHP and your little database and setting it all up, but I'm not going to do that right now for this video. Hopefully Homebrew is able to install all the packages I need, because I can go something like brew install PHP, and hopefully PHP will be installed on this system now. And Homebrew is generally quite good about having all those packages I could need to use. But it does look like Docker isn't going to be this perfect solution for all the packages I could want. So let's take a look at another one, Home Assistant. So I want to say installation of Home Assistant on this system and see how that goes. So it looks like they have a few options with containers and a full operating system and all of that. So I'm going to say macOS, and we're going to say running it on macOS. And taking a look at the install instructions for Mac with Home Assistant, it wants me to run the appropriate image for a virtual machine, and I don't have VirtualBox on this because it's a ARM system, not a x86 system, so it looks like that's not really going to be happening right now. So let's try using the Home Assistant core method, which looks like it isn't reliant on a virtual machine. And it seems to want me to use apt, but hopefully Homebrew can do all the same things. So likely I can go copy and paste this command here and just do brew install. And using brew instead, I can install all of these packages. Now the next thing it wants me to do is to create a Home Assistant account. And I'm going to just run this command in macOS. And user add is not a process. Maybe I do it with sudo, still not going to work. So maybe I'm just going to use system preferences to add the user here. So what if I go under users and just add it here? This is definitely showing off macOS is definitely different than Linux. So you can't just copy and paste your Linux commands, and it's going to require a good amount of thinking to make that all work. But maybe I do want to go create that user here and see if I can just keep going down with more steps. So I've made the user and system preferences, and now I'm going to put the new command in to try to make a directory on /srv/home assistant. And it's going to start complaining because macOS really locks down all the system files. So I can't just do cd/, for example, and say like sudo touch test. It doesn't really want me touching the main file system. There are ways to do this, but I don't really want to dive that far into macOS to do some simple home server installs. So I'm going to stop here on the Home Assistant list because it's going to start getting really complicated. Hopefully I can find a way to run Linux or another operating system to make this possible though. Now let's take a look at our next program, Pihole. Pihole is a nice little program that lets you block ads on your network using DNS. And they have a convenient little script here to just pull in their little install script and pipe it into Bash. And it should work on most Linux file systems, but let's see if it works on a Mac. And it says there's no supported package manager failed. So there goes Pihole. Next program, let's take a look at Sonar. Sonar looks like we have a much better chance of it running here because they have a macOS app I can run. So I can click download, and I will download the little Sonar app. And it says it can't be developed. macOS has a way to bypass it. It used to let you permanently bypass it, but now you have to go under privacy and security. And then under at the very bottom, you can say open the program anyways. And type your password in to let you do it. I'll click open again because macOS really doesn't want you to open it. I'm going to let it move itself to the applications folder. It says OK. macOS really wants to limit what you can do on your system because this is a lot of security issues. But it definitely does make a lot of things like running these little server applications a lot more difficult. And now Sonar wants the Mono framework. So let's try downloading that Mono framework and see if that'll make it work on this system. And after installing Mono on my system, I can go double click and run the Sonar app. And then I have to go follow the little web address right here, copy and paste it into my browser. And then once that's copied and pasted into my browser, Sonar opens right here and it's working successfully. And I can use my system to do all the Sonar things I could want to do. So that's nice to see. Sonar is relatively easy to install, but I wish it had a little app to tell you it was running on this system, like how Jellyfin and Plex have. But this still isn't great. There's a lot of programs I could want to run on this system, but have issues because macOS just isn't supported that well. But perhaps I could use virtual machines to install other operating systems. So Parallels is now doing the automated Windows 11 install for me, so I have access to Windows 11 to try running things in there. It doesn't look like there's an ARM version of Windows Server I can easily run on this system, so there goes running like Active Directory services or anything like that I could want to run on Windows Server. Parallels also has the option to run Linux-based OSs, so I'm going to have it run Debian Linux and see how well that runs, and see if I can run any other programs on Debian that I might want to try using. So now I have a Debian VM running within Parallels, so now I want to see if I can run Pihole within there. So I have the little script that I'm going to copy and paste it, and then I'm going to paste it into the terminal. And it looks like it wants sudo access, and it seems to be going forward with its little install. Now the other thing to note with VMs is I need to set it to bridged networking so it looks kind of like a switch. Otherwise this VM is behind a router within Parallels and not there. So I'm going to go into bridge network, and then I'm going to say Ethernet, because that's what I want it to be bridged to. So I'm going to say keep going forward, continue, I want it to do all of that. I'm just setting everything for the default right now, because I just want to demonstrate that this is able to work. And my Debian VM says it's now ready to be used. I can hit OK, and taking a look at my system that I'm doing this on, which is another system on the local network, I can see Pihole is running right here now correctly. Looks like it's running right fine. And if I do a little DNS request onto my system, it looks like the DNS server is working correctly. So now I have Pihole running on an M1 Mac Mini through Parallels. So it looks like Parallels is able to do a reasonable amount. And now that lots of Linux ARM systems like the Raspberry Pi are being used as home server systems, there's lots of support for these OSs out there. So the little Debian VM on this M1 Mac Mini should run all of those programs just fine, and probably better than almost any of those other single board computers, because the M1 processor is a good amount faster than most of those single board computers have on them. It would still be better to run in a native operating system if possible, but Linux in a Parallels VM is a pretty good experience. I also have the ability to run Windows 11, but I can't really think of any great server uses for Windows 11 on this system. Windows Server isn't supported, so I can't run lots of those. And most things that run on Windows in a server environment also run on Linux, and in my opinion, Linux runs it better anyways. But it is another option if you want to have that. One of the places I hear about performance being the limitation the most when it comes to a home server is transcoding media for something like a Plex or Jellyfin server. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm transcoding 4K H.264 footage that I have it stored on there locally into 1080p H.264 that my devices are playing. So right now I have 3 streams on this laptop, 1 stream on my phone, and 3 streams on this system right here. And now let's take a look at scrubbing performance. So if I jump to somewhere different in the video right now with 7 streams going, it's taken its time to find the new position and transcode up to it. And now let's take a look at usage on this system. It looks like ever since I did that scrub, my CPU usage shot right up as it's trying to catch up. My GPU usage is still super low. I'm guessing it's doing a lot of transcoding on the GPU encoding part, but it doesn't show the usage from what I can see on the transcoding part of the system. Let's cut down my streams to about 3 right now and see how much better my scrubbing performance is with less streams going on at the one given time. And if streams cut down to 3 right now, if I go on Jellyfin, select one of my videos, it should start playing in a couple of seconds. Still not perfect, but reasonably good. And if I jump to somewhere different in this long video here, it takes maybe about 5 seconds to catch up. But it is doing 3 4K transcodes at one given time. The most impressive part about the system's ability to transcode videos is how little power it uses when doing so. The max power the system seems to pull when running everything is about 30 something watts, maybe 35 watts at max power. About 20 watts of moderate load, so it's pulling about 20 watts right now with 3 4K streams running on it at this moment, and less than 10 watts idle. I see somewhere between 8 to 9 watts under normal idle conditions. And it's about silent this whole time. I've never heard the fan spin up on this unit. But with a media server, you're going to want somewhere to store all of your media on. And the Mac Mini has a lot of limitations in this regard. I could get a Mac Mini with 8 terabytes of storage now. But on Apple's website, they want another $2,400 for that, which is quite a bit when it comes to price per gigabyte for SSD storage. I could get something like an external Thunderbolt-based storage solution. OWC caters towards this product market and has a lot of Thunderbolt-based external storage solutions. For example, here's one of their little 8-bay units that runs off of Thunderbolt. And I could get one, and for about $780, I can get an empty drive with no software. If I want their software, it gives me a little bit more RAID capabilities. It's another $100 at $880. Unfortunately, macOS doesn't have the best built-in RAID capabilities. You can use ZFS, but it's not the best supported. If you want a little bit cheaper of an option, you can get USB-based enclosures. Here's one example for about $370 that plugs in via USB and gives you 8 more drive enclosures. But USB is generally less reliable compared to internal drives or Thunderbolt or SAS, so it's probably a worse solution from a lesser known brand. And I think this brings me into the conclusion of this video. A Mac Mini is capable of running most of the common self-hosted home server applications and will work great as a NAS. But the problem is, you need to do a lot of additional stuff to make it fully capable, which an existing x86 system or a small board computer is a lot closer to already. So for example, for storage, you need to get external storage for a Mac Mini, whereas it's easy to get a relatively small PC that comes with all of those hard drive bays included. Or something like a Synology that's designed to be used as a NAS with those hard drive bays included. And while power consumption and encoding wise the M1 processor is quite impressive here, the Intel laptop processors and other low power processors aren't that far off. And I'd be more than willing to take the compromise of a bit worse power consumption for much better compatibility and not having to use VMs to run these basic programs. While the Mac does have a lot of capabilities for Mac-only applications, for example for something like an Xcode build server or a caching server for iCloud, I think it doesn't make a lot of sense on its own if you're not already in the Apple ecosystem. I think the M1 processor would be super cool if Apple made a standalone NAS using it, But seeing how Apple wants to push their iCloud and subscription services, I don't see them doing that. I had fun today playing around with the M1 Mac Mini as a home server, and I was overall pretty impressed, especially with how many 4K transcoding streams it could do at any given time. And I think it's a really capable processor, and I think we're going to see more processors like that on the market. I think M1 just isn't really the one for a home server often, unless you're in the Apple ecosystem. Let me know what your thoughts on using the M1 systems in a home server is, and if you've had other experiences with Mac Minis or other Apple M1 systems in the comments below. Thanks for watching this video.